Thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the Sandwich of Coherency. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this. As you know, over the past week, Biden's attorneys have been at the Supreme Court trying to argue why 43 million Americans who took out loans to go to college should have their debts modified or waived, and the remaining 300 plus million Americans should be responsible for that debt. Because I think that's one of the most important things that people are not remembering. Well, not everybody. A lot of people are paying attention to this. So the people I'm talking about are really those that are on the left. We'll call them Democrats. We'll call them leftists. We'll call them liberals. Whatever you want to call them whatever you want as far as I'm concerned. But the one thing they all are in the end is fiscally irresponsible. You're talking about people that look at what other people have, and it doesn't matter by what means they were able to attain it, whether it was inherited or whether you worked very hard to get what you have. What they do is they look at what you have, and instead of saying, we need to find ways so that people who have not come up like this or who have not achieved like this are able to achieve. No, instead of doing that, their first thought is, how do we take what those people have and give it to the people that don't? Okay? Now, this is not to say that people who don't have not gone through some kind of hardship or something has happened to put them in there, because I completely recognize that shit happens to everybody. Okay, things happen. Life isn't always perfect, and sometimes you need a come up. You need some help. You need some assistance. Okay. As I once heard somebody ask somebody to bum. They asked a guy if he could bum a Newport, and the guy held up the pack and he said, "What does it say?" And the guy said, "Newport." He said, "Right, Newport, not support." I really don't know how that fits, but it's hilarious. At least it's hilarious in my mind. But people need support. Now, the thing of what they're doing is saying, and mind you, they have had polls on this, and they've asked people, what do you plan on doing with the money that you're going to save if the government takes away your debt that you owe, that you are responsible, that you signed your name on the contract for, the loan that you went into the office, that you talked to the lender, that you negotiated the terms. They told you, what the payment structure was going to be, how long to expect to pay it, ways you can restructure it, I guess, if you need to later on. Yes, the loan that you went in and put your name on the dotted line and signed your name to, under the guise that you are responsible enough for it. Okay? They asked those people, what do you plan on doing with that money you'll save? And most responses were retail. Take a holiday. No. They've decided, I'm not going to use the money to benefit my loan structure. No, I'm going to buy frivolous shit that has nothing to do with it and keep themselves in the same position that they're currently in, which has them begging the federal government to make everybody else pay for their stuff. And when it's all said and done, they will still be in that same position. The remaining of the loan will still have to be paid. And again, they'll still be saying, we need more taken off. I can't afford this. Look, I understand shit sucks, okay? But, these arguments that I'm going to play for you from Biden's attorneys, this witch, this witch is just absolutely evil to the core. The comparison that they use to justify this, federal personnel, people who have signed up to the United States Armed Forces, to the many different branches, those who have gone to fight for the United States, those who have been injured in their service to this great nation. In their mind, those people are they're in the same basket as the kid who went out to get a gender studies degree or a political science degree. Got a degree in some bullshit that has nothing to do with the real world. And now they can't find a job. Oh, wow, you've got your degree in medieval literature. Where are you going to get a job at? You've got your degree in gender studies. Now you feel you have it on paper. Now you can tell people, see, you are certified to tell people a man can be a woman. People just don't understand pronouns, blah, 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 garbage. Where are you going to get a job at? Everybody's a fucking psychologist these days. Everyone is a fucking sociologist these days, a psychiatrist. There are all these... Isn't it ironic? Let me go ahead and say this, front load this. These people suffer from mental illness. We know they suffer from mental illness, but because people want to be virtuous in what they consider the right side of history, they don't want to call these people out on their mental illness. So what you have are a bunch of people who are coming out of university with mental illness, who have degrees that are supposed to help them help other people with mental illness. And then everybody wonders, well, why are American people so fucked up? Why is America the largest consumer of drugs dealing with mental problems? How? Because a huge portion of people that are helping people with their mental problems have some of the worst mental problems. You have people giving advice to people who really shouldn't even be around people. Now, I'm getting a little off base here, so let's just go ahead and jump into what I really wanted, what you came here for. Let's get into what you came here for. Vroom, vroom.
The secretary might consider similarly providing discharge if that's what it takes to make sure borrowers don't default.
You think because there's a provision to allow waiver when your school closes, that because of that Congress shouldn't have been surprised when $500 billion is wiped off the books?
Well, I think it demonstrates that in a statute that's centrally focused on providing financial relief, that terminology should be given its plain meaning, and Congress could have anticipated that in a particular situation, you might expect that the way that you need to ameliorate the borrower harm is through loan forgiveness. And Mr. Chief Justice, maybe I can just use an example drawn from the initial context of promulgation of this statutory relief. It was initially a bill that was limited just to helping service members who were fighting in wars. And think about an example of a service member who goes off to war, and you can provide HEROES Act relief to ensure that the service member doesn't have to pay down the loan while the term of service. But if something were to happen that left that service member worse off because of his service, say a disability that doesn't qualify for total discharge, it makes perfect sense to think that Congress would have expected that the Secretary would have authority under this act to make the service member whole and to ensure, just as the plain language suggests, that that service member isn't going to be left worse off because of the circumstance that prompted his service in the first place. And so there's that first order question of whether you can ever do any debt discharge. And I think in that context, it's perfectly sensible to read this language to authorize that.
General.
Yeah, I didn't make that shit up. You heard it come out of her own mouth. This is what this is just one of the many arguments that they're trying to use. They're trying to conflate the two. And I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. There's no apology for this. There is no comparison between service members who were injured in their service to the United States versus someone who did not want to join the military. Somebody who decided to go to university. That is your right. That is fine to do. But we know that a huge portion of college students these days do not like the armed forces. They've actively tried to remove recruitment from universities, say it's taking advantage of people. Now, there's no comparison. So I want to make this point before we close out. and this is probably one of the bigger parts about this whole student loan debt forgiveness that has not been mentioned, that is not being talked about enough. And this is to prove the point. The President of the United States does not have the authority nor the right to distribute individual debt to everybody else. And this is the key here. That is the most important thing about this whole student loan debt forgiveness, is it is a redistribution. They've gone from we need to redistribute the wealth to we also need to redistribute everybody's debt. And look, understand what their claim is that, well, the COVID hardship, because of what happened during COVID, it made it hard for these people to be able to pay off their student loans. They lost their jobs. They lost this. They lost that. Blah, blah, blah. They lost everything. Okay? Now, I'm not making a joke about that, but I'm serious about this because how many other regular Americans went through the same shit? Millions of Americans throughout the United States, throughout this whole COVID situation, were also, mind you, we're talking people who didn't have student loan debt. They were also hit with situations, and this is the point I was making in the beginning. They were hit with the medical situation. They were hit with the fact that, what? Oh, they couldn't work, so they couldn't pay their mortgages. They couldn't pay their loans that they had. People lost their cars. The same shit situation that she's using to justify why the president should redistribute the debt of 43 million Americans, those same things happened to the rest of America. But there is, as I said, as they actually go on further into the Supreme Court cases, they have nothing in place for that. They have not even considered the rest of America that went through the same problems. And as far as the people who paid back their loans, they have nothing in place to be able to make those people whole. No kind of reimbursement. Those people, they literally basically tell them, oh well, just suck it up. You did good. These people didn't. You want a cookie? Fuck you. This is where we're at right now. And so mind you, and this is what I'm talking about, the redistribution of individual debt, because not all of these student loans of these 43 million American people are federal. Many of them are state. Many of them are federal that are handled by private institutions. So here's the thing. At no point have I heard from the White House, from any of the leftist talking heads, from any of them, or any institution, but nobody has come out and said that they have been in contact with the institutions that are responsible for these loans that these people owe money to, and these institutions have agreed to wipe X amount of dollars or zero out the debt from their books for these people. That has not happened. That's not going to happen, because there's no way in hell you're going to get any one of these major lenders or institutions to agree to wipe billions of dollars off of their books. This is $500 billion they're talking about in upwards of spending. $500 billion. And as far as the federal ones go, well, the government's not just going to let that money go. Okay, this is tax money. They're not going to give, and if they do give it up, they're going to make sure everybody else pays this. But the important part of this is that, and this is the one thing you haven't heard, you have not heard any major lender or institution say that we are willing to wipe the debt of these people who borrow money from us off of our books. That's where if you want student loan debt forgiveness, have the federal government talk to the institutions. Ask them to wipe the debt off of their books. Because here's the thing, the federal government's not going to any of these places and saying, hey, can you wipe the debt off of these millions of Americans who have fallen behind because of this pandemic? Can you wipe this off of their books so that we can have them be whole, so that they can get back to moving forward? Would you please tell your shareholders and your investors that you're going to swipe $2, $3, $4 billion off? They're not doing that. Now, that means that the federal government all they're doing is telling each of these people that you are now responsible for this much less. So let's say it's the $10,000. You are now no longer responsible for this $10,000. This $10,000 is now going to be the responsibility of all Americans, because the White House wants to pay these loans off. That's the key. The White House is still going to pay. The banks, the institutions, all the lenders are still going to get their money. Okay, and that's going to handle that. You know, that debt will be passed to the Americans, and you will see increase in your taxes, especially on a local level. People don't really think about it, but the money that they collect, it will hit them on the local level. Now, next you're going to have, the federal government's going to say, you do not owe us the $10,000 now. Now the rest of America is responsible for that. The whole point is, now these people, instead of having to pay that amount, they only have to pay a portion of it. The rest of America will now have to pay it. And they say, well, what about, these people want to get, educations, and they want to be able to do this, and they want to do that, and all this and all that. But here's the problem. It's obviously not working. The problem is that the argument they're using to justify paying off one set's debt is the same things that affected millions of other people. And you're telling these people over here that are struggling as well that they need to be responsible for these people over here. And mind you, these aren't all people who, they don't know, it's not that they all don't have jobs. Many of them have really good jobs. Like, seriously. I mean, but you take someone like AOC. Take AOC. She's still bitching about her fucking student loans. She's in Congress. She actually makes enough to pay off her loans. Think about that. Just think about that. So maybe we need to work on management of funds. This should be enough to tell you that someone like her shouldn't be in office. But I digress. I'm getting away from the point again. Point is that student loan debt forgiveness is not going to be the answer to this solution. They need to come up with something else that doesn't involve the rest of America being responsible for it. But I thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.